This is Alexa Linton, and you're listening to the Whole Horse Podcast. I'm coming to you from the Cowichan Valley on beautiful Vancouver Island in Canada, and I'm excited to be bringing amazing instructors from around the world to share their knowledge about all the ways that we can keep ourselves and our horses well and happy, and about some of the cutting-edge techniques, training, and different aspects that are coming into the horse industry and changing it from within. I'm so excited you're here, and I'm excited about the times that we live in and the shifts that are happening in the horse industry before our eyes. Let's get started. Hi, everyone. It's Alexa Linton here with the Whole Horse Podcast. And as always, I'm so excited about my next guest here. But in terms of this guest, we've known each other for a long time. This seems to be a consistent theme with my guests. Through horses, and Anastasia has been a real inspiration for me, particularly with the newest work that she's doing in the world. So Anastasia is what's called an equine facilitated mental health worker, and she's passionate about a lot of different things, which I'm going to let her explain a little bit more in a second. But Anastasia was so brave and decided with her and her partner to travel, and she's now traveled 22,000 kilometers across North America, filming their documentary series, Equus, Healing through Horses. And this, is a project like this is beyond words for me in terms of truly showing what is potential with this work with equine facilitated therapy and talking to the people on the ground doing this work. So I'm so excited to see more of what's coming together. She's joining us now from Arizona. Anastasia, thank you for being here.
Hi, thank you so much, Alexa. I'm so excited to talk to you.
Me too. And we kind of laughed earlier because me and Anastasia have a tendency to just like talk and talk and talk and talk. And
yeah.
So I think we'll be all right getting through this, 50 minutes or so with lots to say and maybe more to come in the future. So Anastasia, tell us a little bit about this project that's happening for you and John right now. I know that like that's a really big nutshell, but like if you can sort of break it down.
Look, it's a blurb.
Yeah.
I've said this a few times, so I'm used to saying this.
So, give us the pitch.
I'll give you the pitch. So I'm from the Vancouver Island, where Alexa is right now, and I was working as a equine facilitated wellness worker for about 7 years, mostly with children and youth, but adults with addictions. And my partner, John Fulton, is a filmmaker and a photographer. And there were so many days where I would come home and tell him about, oh my God, this beautiful moment happened where the horse walked up to the woman and put its head on her heart, and like all these beautiful images. And he was like, are there any films about this? And at first I said, yeah, there's lots. I don't know why, but and then we watched them, and there's some beautiful films about people and horses, but there's actually nothing out there talking about the field of equine therapy. And there's about 1 million different acronyms, like equine facilitated learning, equine assisted psychotherapy. There's like 1 million different ones. So I just say equine therapy because that seems like the vaguest and most broad term. And so we said, okay, let's make a film about this. And it kind of then turned into, we're going to make a series, a documentary series about equine therapy.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we've done is we've driven from our little Vancouver Island across Canada and then all down the States. And we've been interviewing the leaders in equine therapy and finding people who've had some kind of life challenge or maybe mental health challenge and have found that horses have really helped them. And so those individual people, their stories will sort of be the center of our episodes. And then we're going to have professionals sort of talking to that topic throughout. So for instance, one episode is going to be about veterans with PTSD. Another episode is going to be about complex trauma. Another one will be about grief and loss. One will be on seniors. One will be on children. So that's sort of how we've broken it up. But of course, how these crazy journeys go is that it's also had a huge impact on us, of course, meeting all of these amazing people. And, you know, we were on the road for 3 months, and we made it to Phoenix, Arizona, when we got a call about my father, and he died by suicide, and our family home burnt down. So John and I went home for 3 months, sort of recouped. Recouped isn't the right word.
There's another word.
We laid on the couch and watched Netflix and cried. But honestly, we went back. We went back on the road. We had left our van at a friend's house in Phoenix, and we flew back down to finish this crazy project that we set out on. And so here we are.
The van is still running. The van is still running. Yeah.
So another funny part of the story is that we're in like not a cool like Volkswagen van or Sprinter. We're in like a really ugly old minivan that we bought for $500 off of a couple on Gabriola. And we took the seats out. We put a bed in the back. We have, you know, a little camper stove and, you know, a cooler. And so it's nothing fancy, but it's been doing the trick.
That's amazing. Yeah.
And it's still running. I don't even...
that van does not owe you a thing.
I know. I'm gonna write to Honda because I think that we should get a Honda sponsorship.
That you should, absolutely. I hope you're getting lots of outtakes of the van.
We are. So I think they should make a commercial about us or something and give us a free van. I don't know.
Absolutely. I think you should definitely do that. Wow.
Never hurts to ask.
What a journey. And so for those people that are tuning in who've never heard of equine therapy, or maybe this is a new concept for them, can you just give us a little bit of an explanation? I mean, I am also aware of the many facets of this industry, but you know, for many it's quite actually new, and even for a lot of horse people, they might not know that, you know, this is happening out there. So, you know, absolutely. Yeah, what is this?
Yeah, so it's basically taking your typical counseling session out of the office and outdoors with a horse. And so you know, we know from being around horses that they're really good at reading our internal states. So, you know, horses are herd animals. They're really good at reading each other. If one horse in the herd is in danger, probably the whole herd is. So they're super attuned to one another, and they're super attuned to people as well. And so they're kind of like this biofeedback machine in a way where you can try and hide how you're feeling around them, and you're not going to get very far, because horses are really motivated to work with you when you're being authentic, when you are acting the way you feel. And that's not the way our society really encourages us to be, right? We've learned to manage our emotions in all sorts of ways, and we put lots of masks up, and so the horses just allow us to be ourselves around them. And then, you know, that's where the work really gets to start. And, you know, the horses don't judge our emotions as good or bad. It's just information. Yep. And they teach us, you know, it's like, instead of talking about the changes you want to make in your life, you get to go out and practice it. So for instance, I remember being younger and I was quite quiet, and I needed to learn how to set boundaries. And I knew I needed to set boundaries. I knew why I needed to. I knew why I struggled with it, but it didn't change the fact that I just still couldn't.
Yes.
Until I practiced with the horse. I practiced moving this 1,000-pound animal out of my space, keeping them there, and then inviting them back in over and over again until that got built into my body. And I know what it feels like when I'm safe and when I'm not safe. And I know how to set boundaries and all those things. So that's just a small example of how the horses help us, but they, you know, they also encourage us to be in the present moment. So, you know, we go through our world so much of the time thinking about the future, thinking about the past, and the horse is just right there in the present moment. And so, you know, all the neuroscience research coming out now says the way to heal trauma and to update the nervous system is to be present and to let your body know this is where you are here right now in this moment. Your bum is in a chair, your feet are on the ground, whatever it is. And the horses help us do that because they're large and we're outside and they just,
They require our presence.
They do, yeah. So that's kind of like the very general explanation of why somebody would do therapy with horses. But people have taken it in all kinds of directions. So a lot of people work with a horse solely on the ground, so no riding. It's all about the relationship on the ground. It's all about horsemanship skills or all of those things. And some people have done more riding with people, and there's lots of research coming out now about the effects of riding and laying on the back of a horse. And some people, you can do a therapy session just watching a herd of horses and not even touching them. So there's about 1 million different ways of doing the work. And we've interviewed people that you know, might come more from the energetic, you know, energy healing, spiritual side of the work. We've interviewed people who have doctorates in neuroscience research who are doing the work. And it has its own flavor. But honestly, the thing John and I keep saying is like, it's kind of like, it matters and it doesn't matter. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
People are interpreting it through their own lens, but ultimately we've just seen people doing really, really healing work, helping people to start new lives and to be their best selves, and the way they get there doesn't matter too much. Is honestly kind of where I've come at it, which is different than where I started, because I was I had an opinion about what I thought this was the right way, that's the wrong way, and
right.
I've checked my ego and
absolutely. And how interesting, right, that, you know, that's the part of your learning on the journey too, right, is that sense of, okay, like I had this idea of what worked and what didn't, and it sounds like that shifted over your journey.
I think so. That actually shifted pretty quickly.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how many places have you visited now? Have you counted them up?
We haven't, but John made a guess that we've probably interviewed 70 people.
Wow.
You know, clients included.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people.
A lot of people. You're going to have a lot of editing ahead of you.
Oh my God, we're going to have a lot of editing. That's John's end though, so. Well,
for my own curiosity's sake, what's sort of the idea around timing of, you know, the release of things?
Well, this is our plan at the moment, is that we're going to focus on one episode and try and get it done. You know, we're hoping by next fall. Yeah. And then we're going to take that episode to different film festivals and try and get some help from a production company or distribution company, or just, you know, get some backing that way. Yeah. And then we'll slowly start editing all the other episodes as well. So.
Yeah, it's a big undertaking. Now John was a relative beginner with horses when he began all this. What has he learned over the course of this journey?
Oh man, actually he would be so fun to interview because he's learned a lot. And so when we
I'm
left,
sure.
he had sort of a general appreciation for horses, but he was kind of like, yeah, you know, he wasn't like a horse crazy person. He didn't really, if anything, he would probably say he was a bit scared of them.
Mm-hmm.
And now he's just like, I can't wait till we have horses.
Ah, yay! He's
um,
been converted.
yeah, but he's a neat one because he didn't have any preconceived expectations,
Absolutely.
and he's witnessed so many amazing moments that he gets it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And he's experienced horses. You know, he has this story about when we were filming in April, and somebody was presenting, so he had to get into a ring. There was kind of a group of people and I think 2 or 3 loose horses, and he had kind of avoided actually going in the ring for as long as he could, and he's like, I have to go in to get this shot. And the horse that was being really cheeky and kind of pulling on the presenter's clothes and stuff decided to come up to him, and he came up behind him and rested his head right on his neck. And John was like, okay. And so the presenter, it was she's funny, so she just was like, okay, we're gonna change gears, here, give me the camera. And she flipped the camera on him and was like, what's going on? And he got to describe, you know, oh, you know, I had a bit of fear of horses, and now, you know, he was working on that and stuff, and the horse was just like gently blowing on his neck and lifted its head right over his head and put it on the other side, like his other shoulder.
Yeah.
And he basically learned, like, just because they could hurt him doesn't mean they would.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
all the horses like around him like gathered around him and like laid on the ground, like it was like all the
Oh my God.
yeah, it was like, and honestly, it's so funny. We'll be filming and these horses, like, this is the part of the work, is you can't hide, like, so
No.
just because you're behind a camera doesn't mean the horse isn't going to know something is going on internally with you. And
Oh my goodness.
so,
Wow.
that's been fun.
Amazing. Well, and I know for you, I mean, like I've experienced, you know, for everybody out there, I've actually been, like, trained a little bit in this work and things, with Sandra Wallen at Chiron's Way, and I just been like you said, like that moment with John where it's like I wouldn't believe this if I wasn't seeing it with my own eyes, right? The way that horses just bring us back to ourselves, right? And help us show up. You know, I remember one instance where her mare Grace, like I used to like be, you know, even more of a 12-year-old back then, where I would just like pout and like sulk in a corner and be like, meh, you know. And I remember this one day we just started the day and I was pouty and I was like sulking in the corner of the round pen. Everybody else was standing up and open, and I was like, my arms crossed and like crouched down. And Grace, the kindest, gentlest mare, came over right up to me and literally like pushed me over with her head. Like,
She's like, knock it off, Alexa.
Stop it. Stop it. And I just couldn't help it. Like, I just started laughing uncontrollably, as did everybody else that was there. Cause, you know, it was so obvious that she was like, you're a grown woman.
Yeah.
Sort it out, you know? And I did. I was like, okay, yep. Point taken. It felt almost like, you know, a playful slap across the face a little bit, you know, just come on now. But, you know, there was so many moments like that. And I got a chance to take Diva with me, and then watching, you know, what was profound was like, oh my God, this mare is completely different with someone else than she is with me, and completely offering something different than she does with me. To someone else. Like, that blew my mind. So, you know, I know for you, you know, like I saw you when you were home, and it was like obviously just such a hard time. And you know, what have you seen going back out on the road? It sounds like that was probably the most healing thing that you could do for yourself. You know, how have the horses helped?
Yeah. Oh man. The place that we're staying at right now. So people have been so generous with us and have let us just camp out at their house for a week or two at a time sometimes, or sometimes.
Beautiful. Yeah.
The woman's house we're at right now, she has a little herd. There's 2 minis, a small horse, and a donkey, and she often just opens the gate and they're just loose back in the backyard. And just I think a week or two ago, I got a call that my grandmother had a heart attack, and getting that call was so familiar feeling to me as that my dad died, and I was completely re-triggered.
Yeah.
I happened to be outside, and the donkey, she just came out of nowhere, like, and just very gently leaned into my back, and I just collapsed on her back and released a lot. And I mean, that's just a small moment of how the horses and animals have helped me. I mean, this kind of grief, it goes kind of beyond and under and around the words that you can put to it. It's like an unspeakable kind of pain, and that's where the horses really get it, you know. I don't have to explain it. I can take a break, walk outside, and just sit with them. I can cry, I can not cry, I can talk to them, I can not talk to them. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
And then the horses kind of know when, okay, that's enough, and they move on and they go to their hay pile, or they kind of go, are you going to feed me dinner now? Or, it's like, right, thank you. It's like they meet you there, and then they're like, yeah, we're not going to just sit in this forever.
Yeah, we're not going to stay here forever.
Yeah.
I need hay. Yeah. Wow.
It's been huge. And I got the chance to do some equine assisted EMDR. So that's a whole nother discussion. But EMDR is, I might get this acronym wrong, but I think it's eye movement desensitization regulation.
Something like that. Yeah.
And the idea of it is that it helps with traumatic memories, and it uses bilateral stimulation. So they will tap back and forth on your shoulders or your knees, or they use back and forth eye movements. But basically the method is to help you process traumatic events, which I obviously needed. So I got a woman who does that work, but with horses. And that was hugely helpful for me. And I can share a tidbit that I've been.
Yeah, I'd love that.
It's been really helpful for me, and I think I'm probably not the only person that has experienced this. And it's sort of, my dad's struggles with mental health and addiction went on for a very long time. So it's not just the event of his death; it's sort of a long period of time that's hard to heal from. And what she described to me was that usually before an event that happens, there's a period of calm, and our bodies start to think that period of calm is a precursor to trauma. And because I was telling her, I love yoga and meditation, but I just can't follow through on it. And why is that? And so that's what she described to me. And it was like, yes, the light bulb going off. It's true. Like, I have a low tolerance to calm, because to me, in my mind, it's calm before the storm. It's not just
totally.
So that's been my most recent learning, is just, experience the calm and just feel it, and try to keep practicing that. And I know that sounds small, but it's actually been profound for me.
I can imagine.
Yeah. And I think that's really common for pretty much anybody that's experienced long-term stress, or like big traumatic events, or small traumatic events even. You're used to being on hyper alert. And so, I mean, that's where the animals come in, and nature is huge for me too. It's easier with them than, like, I find, going outside and feeling the sun or the wind on my face, and being with the horses, it's easy to just sink into that moment. I find that harder when I'm like doing dishes or something like that.
Absolutely. Totally. I know. Like, I'll often just crave like going outside and like mucking out a paddock,
Yeah.
which sounds weird, but it's like, it's just so calming and peaceful, and it's a way to reconnect. And, you know, like there's those little moments that we often, you know, miss out on, like, especially if we kind of agendify our horse time, I guess, you know. And both Anastasia and I come from, like, I think Anastasia, you're definitely from a less traditional background than me as far as horsemanship, which is awesome. So Anastasia, you know, worked um, in a barn that I was working at the time, doing equine therapy, and so we got to know each other through that. But I think oftentimes in even that kind of space, there is this like, okay, I go out, I ride, I do this, like, you know, and there's a timeline. So
I
that
can relate
sense,
to
right? Like that sense of, okay, like I'm just gonna go like put my chair in a paddock and hang out, or, you
that.
know, just sit outside. Like I have you found that your kind of relationship, I'm sure it has, I mean, this is a fairly obvious question, but, you know, how has your relationship with horses changed from that space of like being a quote unquote horsewoman
Mm.
and then doing the work that you're doing, and then now, like, you know, there's been this transition to this other role that you're playing right now. Yeah, what have you noticed about your relationship with horses?
Well, yeah, I mean, I could so relate to what you're saying. So I've actually never owned my own horse. So I was one of those horse crazy kids that would pick poo and pick rocks and clean buckets as much as I could to get horse time in. So I think, you know, the last few years working at the barn where I was doing equine therapy work, I kind of forgot to what you said, just go out and enjoy time with them. It was always like I was facilitating something, or I was working or doing chores or something like that. And so kind of leaving everything behind and going on the road and just
Mm-hmm.
meeting horses fresh and new and people. It's been such a good experience. Um and then, you know, since my dad's death too, it just it's a good reminder of what's really important and all the stuff that we get caught up in all the time. So yeah, you know, it's kind of hard to put words to, but I think it's just appreciating the just being around them, just that they're there at all, to be honest. And that
Yeah.
sometimes I think like we get really caught up on the proper way to do things. So, oh, you know, that person uses a rope halter, and your mind either think that's a good or a bad thing, or oh, that person, you know, is leading the horse wrong, or you know what I mean? Like we
Yeah.
have so many preconceived ideas, and it's really all just BS, and it doesn't matter. And it's about checking in, being authentic. Is the horses will let us know, and for the most part horses are very giving. If you People do techniques differently all over the world. And
Yeah.
it's really about um, appreciation, I think. Just like, oh my gosh, look at this beautiful horse in front of me. What a joy is it to just spend time with them and to play with them. And it doesn't really matter if I'm doing it wrong or not. And so that's kind of, I guess, does that answer your question?
Yeah,
But
I love that. It's so critical because, you know, we do. I mean, like, especially in the horse world, it's like it's classic, you know, to be like, oh, there's like a million opinions about that. Like you change, you know, you ask, you know, one person about what to feed your horse, and it's like this,
your story you asked, right?
you
Yeah.
know, yeah, you're like, oh gosh, okay, I've opened up a major can of worms.
Yeah.
And yeah, it can be very confusing and frustrating at times. And I know for myself with Diva, that was like that was one of my biggest messages, because I was trying all these different trainers and, you know, like trying to make all these things happen. At the end of the day, it was literally stepping back from all that and just trusting myself,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and not necessarily trusting myself to not make mistakes, because you know, we're humans, so we're gonna do that. But, you know, trusting that at least I could pay attention to Diva and know when she was in distress, or like know when I needed to shift gears around something, or, you know, whatnot. So those things I started to have more, rather than overriding that in favor of listening to a particular authority on something, being
I
able to listen to the authority of my own knowing and Diva's knowing,
yeah,
even,
I think that parents could probably relate to that because
yeah,
you get so worried about doing it the right way. You read all the books and you watch all the videos and
yep,
you consult with experts, and then also, ultimately it comes down to your relationship with the other. It comes down to listening to your instincts and sometimes just keeping it simple, you know, and yeah, you do the best you can. And the truth is none of us have all the answers to these things.
no.
So,
Well, yeah, the simplicity thing, let's just highlight that. It's often far more simple than we think.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah.
Especially with horses.
Yeah.
Especially with horses, we can make it seem very complex, and yet, you know, they have these needs that are both simple and complex, I guess, in terms of they're different than, how we might look at it. Yeah, so I want to hear more about this journey. I want to hear more about the people you've met, and has there been any particular, I mean, I don't want you to like I don't want you to say one person in favor of another, but has there been any kind of like
Mm.
real realizations along the road that, people doing really cool stuff, or, really pushing the edges? I know me and Anastasia really love talking about, some of the more controversial places in terms of horses, like talking about advocacy, and we like to talk about privilege and these sorts of things. Is there anybody out there doing work that you were really kind of,
Well,
you
yeah,
know
yeah, without, favoring anybody, I can talk about some of my thoughts on it. So,
yeah.
I mean, I'm really excited about the people who are, yeah, finding ways to offer this work for free to people.
Yes.
That is hard. How do you keep your business sustainable and keep costs low or for free for the people you're offering services to? I haven't found, a perfect model for that, but there's a few people who have found ways of doing that. And that, I mean, the obvious is doing a nonprofit and doing
Yep.
tons of fundraising. But some other people I've met have care farms, so they also
Mm.
sort of, it's the focus isn't solely on the horse, it's also on the land, growing vegetables, like a
Yep.
farm to table program. Or yeah, there's so many different ways of setting up your practice that it kind of excites me, I guess. It doesn't
Wow.
just that for profit type model. And Alexa and I have talked about this a lot, that the equine therapy world and horses in general can sometimes have a bad reputation as being a privileged form of therapy or privileged,
Hmm.
um, you know, uh, activity. And so I don't
Yep.
think it needs to be that way. As somebody who has never owned their own horse and who has just found ways of being around them, I think that we need to give more opportunities to people who might not have financial resources, but would really benefit or really add to our field of equine therapy. So, uh,
Absolutely.
yeah, that excites me a lot, actually.
Yeah, that's great to hear. And I know for myself, that's been a real eye opener over the last year or two. And Stasia and I have discussed it as far as, being in an industry where traditionally, particularly, in North American culture, it's sort of the upper, those upper parts of our class system that are having access to horses and riding and all of these things, and both of our desires is to shift that, obviously through the work that Anastasia's been seeing around North America here. There's great benefit to people,
Mm-hmm.
children, adults, seniors, all across the demographic, all across the diversity, levels. Is like, this is beneficial stuff. And I'm really excited to hear that there's some creative ways coming to the forefront of offering up some accessibility in this area, in an arena that tends to be quite inaccessible for a lot of people. Yeah.
I think so. I mean, I was thinking about this the other day, that most of the people I've met are sort of, they've stepped away from the status quo, the status quo of working with horses. They've chosen to work more naturally, or to work more from a relationship basis rather than competition, or rather than ego. They've stepped away from the traditional therapeutic realm, getting out of the office, being outdoors, working on a platform. Horses naturally bring you down to the same level. You're sharing space. If you're outside, you're both cold. When I say both, I mean therapist and client. Instead of you walking into a therapist's office where there's this understated power dynamic where you're in their space, they're the professionals and they maybe don't share a lot, where when you're with the horse, like, you've got to be doing your own work. You got to be present, because a horse doesn't distinguish who's the client, who's the therapist. So I think people who I've met, they're just a little more real. They can't fake it, you know what I mean? Which makes the work hard,
It does make the work hard.
Honestly, it does. It's hard. But
yeah, absolutely. And that's what, I think, I'd love to speak to, hear you speak to just your ideas on, say someone that has never had equine therapy before, but has horses in their life. How might the work that you've been seeing, how might that weave its way? What are a few ways that someone could help that weave its way into their relationship with their horses?
Oh yeah. You mean if somebody was just
hanging out?
Okay, yeah. Oh, I think hugely. I mean, whether you're in a therapy session or not, you're showing up with your horse, and so I think, like, honestly, taking some equine therapy sessions yourself would probably be a fascinating exercise about how to connect to your horse, because if you have a really rough day at work, or you just had a fight with your spouse and you show up to the barn, I bet sometimes you can put it to the side, and sometimes you're riding and your horse is ticked off, or they're grumpy, and you're going, what's wrong with them? And it takes you a while to realize, oh, maybe that's me. Maybe I'm still holding on to that conversation I had earlier in the day, or some unresolved stuff going on. And so it's like it creates more clarity. And and then I think that, like, what I've learned from this work is that I don't view the horse's behavior as good or bad anymore. It's just information. And this is the same way I work with children and youth too. It's just that, the horses don't have words to tell us, I don't know, I have a headache, or you're freaking me out because you're angry but pretending not to be, and so I'm going to show you that through my behavior, or whatever. I don't know, it could be a million different things, but
absolutely,
it's about not taking the misbehavior personally and looking at it as, oh, this is information that something needs to be a bit different. And then you're, less prone to punish, what you would view as bad behavior or misbehavior. There's more understanding and empathy there. It would be adjusting something because it's a conversation.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, and I think that, I know for myself, it took me, you say it might take you a moment, and that moment might be years before you realize, oh my gosh, my horse is actually affected by my experience,
Yeah.
by what I'm bringing into the paddock, by, how I'm showing up for them that day. It's a great experiment. I'm sure Anastasia has played with this numerous times of like, you know, how far away from your horse do you need to be before they know exactly what's happening for you that day, right? And
Yeah.
generally it's like they had you pegged like the moment you drove onto the property,
Yeah.
about what's going on. That's their survival mechanism. I mean, when we're, Anastasia, I wanted to talk to you more about I saw pictures of wild horses. I want to talk to you more about this. But, I know for wild horses in particular, like that survival instinct of knowing what is going on in their environment is so critical to their ability to thrive, right? And so we shouldn't be surprised that our horse has us completely read from tip to toe, the moment we get out of our car, at the barn, or the moment we walk out our door at home if they're on the property. If they're a horse that has expression and is tuned in, which almost every horse is, then that's going to be the case. So tell me about these wild horses, and
Oh,
what did you notice about that? Like, did they?
I have a great story for you,
Oh,
actually.
please.
I mean, we've visited the wild horses twice now, and it's honestly like we've been on the road for months and months. It's my most favorite experience. They are just gorgeous. And so it's down here in Arizona. And so this is the first time we went to visit them. And it's we found them right on a river in the middle of the desert, and we had spent all day looking for them, and we thought, okay, let's make one more stop and see if we can find them. And as a little backstory to this was 3 days before my father died, and
Mm,
we're super downhill, and I was so anxious that I didn't really want to even leave the house, and John kind of got me going. And so, I was doing okay, but really not that okay,
yeah.
basically where it was. And so we go for a little hike on the river, and we find just like a single bachelor horse by himself. And we started following him kind of from the side of the river. He was in the river, and we come around a corner, and there's probably 30-35 horses
Wow.
all
Wow.
kind of piling out from the banks of the river into the river. So the river was, I went in it, and it was probably up to my waist.
Yeah.
It's super high, but there's a kind of green grassy, seaweedy type stuff that grows on the bottom of the river, and the horses would put their heads underwater and pull up a big mouthful.
Wow.
So they were grazing in the.
Yeah.
And so, of course, this was like a dream come true. We were in the middle of the desert. The sun was setting. The colors were just gorgeous, and there was so many babies. Oh, it was so sweet. And so, of course, I couldn't help myself. So I just walked into the river a little bit, and
Yep.
they were actually like quite far away from me. But this emotional stuff we've been talking about,
Yep.
I was so in awe by their beauty. I wasn't thinking about anything else except for that moment right there. And
Yep.
I could just feel so much of the weight being washed down the river. And I pictured just it all flowing down. And as I kind of did that little internal meditation, the horses started moving closer and closer and
Mm.
closer. And I just stood there, and they kind of circled around me in a sense,
Wow.
quite a distance, but there were moments where I probably could have reached out and touched them. They were very close, and I was just on cloud nine. But it was it was hugely powerful for me, and all the stress that was happening, like I hadn't felt that light and that much joy in a while. And so
Yeah.
honestly, that experience with the wild horses has gotten me through many hard nights. There's been
Oh, I bet.
My dad died many nights where I couldn't sleep, and John would say, "Oh, do you remember being in the river with the wild horses?" And the wild horses had a really certain smell. They didn't smell like other horses. It was
Mm.
interesting.
Wow.
I could hear their feet on the rocks. And so, I mean, there's an example of equine therapy without a facilitator around, but
No kidding.
a huge resource for me that I've gone back to many, many times. And I think
Wow.
that was such a gift from the horses that I needed. I had no idea I would need it, but I did.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And to have that, such a track laid to go back
Yeah,
to sit into that experience again, right?
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes
Something to, yeah.
amazing photos and stuff too. So sometimes I
Wow.
look back at the photos like, oh my God, I can't
I
believe.
yeah, I saw, I think a few of them I was just blown
Yeah,
away.
yeah,
Amazing.
yeah,
Wow. So
yeah,
beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And,
yeah.
yeah, horses, I mean, it's profound medicine to be with them. So, and for all of those out there that are horse lovers and people, I hope this inspires you a little bit to maybe, you know, yeah, see your interaction with your horse in a bit of a different light, because there is so much there that we don't always see, especially when we're in a rush or we have an agenda. And so, just to release some of that need for things to be a certain way and be a little more open, even at times to it just flowing, can be, yeah, really incredible, right? It's
Exactly.
just
Yeah, it's true.
you just don't know what magic's gonna happen.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, I want to just finish off here, Anastasia, with a few things so we honor your time and also the people that are coming on. But I wanted to share that Anastasia was actually one of my scholarship winners for the Whole Horse Apprenticeship last year, and I asked her maybe if she would open up a little bit about the apprenticeship and if it's helped her, how it's helped her, before we start talking today. So, is there anything that you wanted to share on that level?
I would love to. So,
Yeah.
the apprenticeship I can't remember if it started before we left on our originally.
Don't remember. It was March, so
It was definitely. So it felt like for my timeline, it was like this getting ready to go on this crazy adventure and listening to the lessons that Alexa put forward. It was like, it made me excited to meet all these different horse people, even though they weren't the same people, but it was just this, the feeling of like there's just so many people out there with a wealth of knowledge and just getting to sink in for like an hour or two, or how long, I guess about an hour with
about
each.
an hour. Yeah.
It was really, really fun. So when we were at home, I would, put the lessons on, and that's what I'd be listening to while I was making dinner and thinking.
Mm,
My friend Sophie was taking it at the same time, so sometimes we'd have discussions about it afterwards. And although there's a forum to write to connect with all the different folks who are taking the apprenticeship.
yeah.
And then when I was on the trip, it was really fun because, and I kind of started to fall behind because it was hard with Wi-Fi and stuff.
Yes.
A chance I'd listen to the different lessons, and what was really neat was that it was kind of split into, the physical, the spiritual, the emotional, all these different facets
Mm-hmm.
of the whole horse, right?
Yeah.
So um, it made me realize, oh, I thought that I had lots of knowledge on this area, and I was like actually more focused on maybe the emotional side. I didn't know a lot about the physical side, or I
Mm-hmm.
don't know. It kind of it showed me where I had some learning to do, and it just made me really interested. And then I've connected with so many people through the,
Yeah.
which has been really cool. And like like I've followed some of the speakers online, so I get to kind of continue learning. So
Yeah.
it's a good way to find out about new people who are doing really cool stuff. And yeah,
Totally.
I
Totally.
highly recommend the.
Oh, thanks, Stasia. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's been so fun. So Anastasia connected with one of the other participants, Kelsey Lawford, for a podcast, and it was a really fun year last year. So like Lucy, one of our speakers, went over, and she went to Australia for this first time and taught at one of our other participants' place, and like a totally full house for 3 workshops. It was really amazing. So I can't wait to I'll be talking to her sometime soon, Lucy Klassen, and seeing how that all went. But yeah, you just really need to see the interweavings, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. And I mean, I asked Anastasia this next question a while back because I knew she probably had so much to offer in this way, but I wanted to ask you, Stasia, if there's particular resources that, you know, would be, that you would recommend. You know, I will include as many as I can on Stasia's page for the podcast. So underneath where the podcast recordings are, so you can look there for links and things. Is there anything? Yeah, I'm sure. Is there anything? You know, what are your faves right now?
It's honestly, it's like there's so many that as soon as you ask me, my mind goes blank. So
let's start with like beginning. Like, what would be like a really great way to begin a journey into learning about equine therapy?
Yeah, I mean, almost everybody has read Linda Canoff's books at some point, which are just one way of doing equine therapy, but it can sometimes open up, like, if you hadn't ever thought of horses other than riding companions, it can really blow your mind. But
totally. That's so, just so people know, we've got Tao of Equus, Riding Between the Worlds, and her newest one is
something about
herds. Yeah, I can't remember. Obviously, but I'm just like literally looking back in my mirror or my computer here, and I see Tao of Equus on the shelf there, and I still cry when I read that.
But so sometimes that's a good one to start with. But honestly, right now I'm kind of bouncing all over the place. So right now, I just finished reading Rupert Isaacson, both of his books. So he's the one that did Horse Boy.
Oh yeah.
He wrote also a second book after that, and I just find them fascinating.
Okay.
To be honest. And for resources, you know, people doing pretty interesting work. Natural lifemanship is combining lots of neuroscience. Well, a lot of people are combining neuroscience research and equine therapy, but they have lots of resources out there.
So natural lifemanship, is that right?
Natural lifemanship, yeah.
I have not heard of that. I'm excited about that.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It depends, you know, how deep down the rabbit hole you want to go.
Oh, you know me. I want to go deep.
Yeah. I'd keep an eye on Sarah Schlote, she's in Canada, and she's partnered up. Well, she's just created a new therapy basically called Equisoma, and it's like a combination of therapy and somatic experiencing.
Oh, I love it. Yeah.
Writing a book, and I'm like, just, you know, waiting patiently. Yeah, because she's brilliantly put the two things together.
Beautiful. Yeah, somatic therapy is my new favorite thing for sure.
Oh yeah, it's cool.
Yeah.
Sarah Jenkins here in Phoenix does the equine assisted EMDR, and she was the first person to put the two together, and she created her own protocol around that, and she's doing brilliant work.
Awesome. Okay, so we'll put her website up as well.
Honestly, I could keep going on.
You could keep going. I mean, and you will be a resource soon, so I will post that as well. You can follow Stasia on, I know your Facebook. There's a Facebook page for Equus Healing Through Horses.
That's right. And
any other ways that are good to connect with you?
We're on Instagram as well.
Yep.
So I think if you look up Equus documentary, you'd find us.
Perfect.
And I'm trying to stay up to date by, you know, posting updates and photos along the way. I've fallen behind the past week. That's how it goes sometimes.
It does, absolutely.
This will be my update. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. And yeah, if you think of anything else, you can just let me know and I will post it on the page. I know that probably there's other things that'll drop in as let
As soon as
this.
I hang up, I'm gonna be like,
Yeah,
why? Next.
exactly. Like, oh, right, this thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, that's great. And thank you so much, Anastasia, for sharing so openly here today as well. I'm sure that we could probably do a whole other one of these on several of the topics that we touched into today, but I think this was absolutely perfect as a starting point for us, and to get those of you out there that may have worked with horses for a long time starting to be curious about a new way of looking at them, and yeah, maybe even going and trying out an equine therapy session. And the nice thing is, as Anastasia has found out, these wonderful people doing this work are cropping up everywhere. It's becoming much more commonplace to have this work. I know even in the area that I live in, I mean, I think we're quite lucky here on the island to have lots of amazing people doing work with horses in this way. So if you do live here on the island, I'm always happy to help with resources. Beyond that, I get a little bit, the lower mainland I can help. And then beyond that, I get a little bit more or less helpful. But, Stasia, I'm assuming people can sort of reach out to you as well.
I was just going to say that I'd be happy to
okay.
people in certain directions too, because I know it can feel a bit daunting, and
yes,
and sometimes, just like regular counselors, not everybody fits everyone either. So sometimes you got to try a few different people, and
absolutely,
everyone has their own style and flavor. So I don't mind at all referring anyone that's interested.
perfect. Thank you, Stasia. And I always call Stasia, so I can't help myself. And I also want to share with people, I know that therapy, that word, sometimes has a stigma in our culture. I know this is a bit of a can of worms to open at the end of this call, but I want to share that I do therapy, Stasia does we and this work doesn't mean that there's something wrong with us or we're broken. It just means it's actually a self-care practice for us. And I know it does profound things for me. I know, I try to let the work that I do with my horses be that as well, every day. But, it's not a weak thing to go and take part in something like this and learn more about yourself. It's actually incredibly courageous. So
thank you for saying that, Alexa. It's so true. I mean, we all have physical health. We all get sick sometimes, and sometimes we break a leg or something, and we don't shame ourselves about having time to heal from that. And we all have mental health. We all have emotional health, and there's times where we feel better than others, and there's times where we need support in that, and there's nothing shameful about that. I'm I'm glad you said that, for sure.
Definitely. It's important. Yeah. And I know on that note, we could probably do a whole other thing on that.
I'd love to just throw this in there if you don't mind. But if anyone is interested, on our website, equusfilm.org, John's put up a bunch of photos that we're selling. So we're completely independently funded at this point. I'm in the middle of writing grants right now. With anybody that's written grants knows how much that sucks. So,
I've heard tell.
It's not fun. So, but we're hoping to get, a chunk of funding that way. But right now we're just solely working off of donations. And right now John has some beautiful prints up for sale if anyone's interested. And the website he's worked through does really cool stuff. You can get it printed on phone cases and all sorts of cool stuff. It's neat. So.
Oh, wow. I'm going to go have a look. What's the website again?
Equusfilm.org. So EQUUS film.org.
Perfect. Okay, everybody, head on over there, check it out. I know John is incredibly talented, so I'm really excited to see that. Well, thank you, Anastasia. Was it painless?
Yes. I survived.
Yes. Anastasia was a little bit nervous coming on, and I was like, I think it'll be good.
Yeah.
So yeah.
John was like, you and Alexa can talk for hours. I feel
It's so true, and I so appreciate it, and I so appreciate your wisdom here, and sharing and opening up maybe a new way of thinking about horses for a lot of people that are joining us today. And for those of you who have come on, I, as always, appreciate you taking the time out of your day to listen in. I know that time is of a shortage these days, and it's busy, and so we, Anastasia and I, appreciate that so much, as do your horses. And I wish you a wonderful week or two. I'll be back soon. I've got some very cool things in the wings. So tune back in shortly. Thanks so much for listening. Bye for now.